Sweet and sour for Africa on day 4 of the FIFA World Cup. We've got Ivory Coast taking a massive stride towards exercising their historic group stage exit coast, while Tunisia continue to completely baffle the football world with their underperformances at the FIFA World Cup. Elsewhere, Germany did the ruthless things Germany likes to do, putting 7 past Curaçao in their first group game of the FIFA World Cup. Japan is winning hearts on and off the field after their performances against the Dutch, and the cleaning of the stadium afterwards. And the head of European football seems to just have bitten a lot more than he can chew after his comments about uninteresting matches featuring the minnows of the FIFA World Cup. Welcome to your World Cup VAR, where we review the tape, we check the stats, and we call out the nonsense as far as this FIFA World Cup is concerned. Hello there, and let's start in Philadelphia. Historically, La Côte d'Ivoire has been the ultimate World Cup paradox, always possessing world-class talent like that much vaunted golden generation of theirs led by Didier Drogba, and yet somehow never advancing beyond the group stages of all the World Cups that they have participated in. No tournament encapsulates this apparent curse of La Côte d'Ivoire quite like Brazil 2014, where they controlled their own destiny against Greece, having beaten Japan and then lost against Colombia. But in a match that everybody expected them to win against Greece, the Ivorians fell short, and they had not been to that World Cup ever since that 2014 exit until now. So when they took to the field against Ecuador, a team that had not lost in 19 matches, well, people had high hopes. But for long stretches against the dangerous Ecuadorian side, it felt as if the same Ivorian underperformance was likely to play out. The South Americans rattled the woodwork 3 times. The Ivorians themselves did hit the woodwork once, and it looked as if this was going to peter out into a goalless drawn game. But enter Amad Diallo of Manchester United. He came off the bench in the 56th minute, and the Manchester United winger injected absolute electricity into the Ivorian performance with 6 successful dribbles. This is the most by any player in this competition, and he capped this off with a 90th minute goal that secured the point for the Ivorians.
Last night in Philadelphia, Côte d'Ivoire did something deceptively simple. They won a game many expected them to struggle in. But the final result was 1-0. Goal from Amad Diallo in the dying minutes of the game. 3 points in the bag. But for anyone who's been following this team across 3 World Cups, you understand exactly how significant that win was.
Now, with that dramatic strike, Amad becomes the youngest ever Ivorian to score at a FIFA World Cup, while simultaneously snapping that Ecuador 19-game winning streak. Huge shout out also to Yan Diomande, who had a lung-busting performance against Ecuador. The end product wasn't always there, but everybody agrees that he's a bag of talent, and he would be a major impact on the ability of the Ivorians to go far in this particular competition. Up next for the Ivorians is a massive test against Germany, who opened their campaign by putting 7 goals. Up next for the Ivorians is a big contest against Germany, who opened their World Cup by putting 7 past debutant Curaçao. Mind you, Curaçao actually scored their first goal of the FIFA World Cup to briefly make this a contest at 1-1. It was an emotional milestone that brought their coach, Dick Advocat, who is also the oldest coach in this competition, to tears. But normal service was quickly resumed as the Germans romped past the debutants to end up with 7 goals to Curaçao's 1 in this group. The Germans may be former champions, having won this competition as recently as 2014, but in the last 2 tournaments, they have exited at the group stage. So they have a point to prove, and perhaps there would still be doubt, because this is Curaçao, until they play the last 2 games of the group, starting with that massive game against La Côte d'Ivoire. Let's stay on the African story, and from the joy that Ivory Coast gave Africans on day 4 to a Tunisian tragedy. Now, Tunisia remain an absolute enigma as far as World Cup participation is concerned. They were the first African country to win a match at the FIFA World Cup in 1978 when they beat Mexico by 3-1. but they have failed to reach the knockout stages in all the subsequent World Cups that they have participated in, and there have been 6 previous attempts. This is their 7th World Cup. Their 2026 campaign started in the worst possible way imaginable, a 5-1 routing against a relentless and ruthless Sweden side, which should probably not even be in this World Cup. The distraction was led by Brighton's Yasin Ayari, who bagged a brilliant brace against the nation of his father's birth, strategically choosing not to celebrate the first goal, but going all out as far as the second goal is concerned. And this is a very familiar script for the Carthage Eagles, who usually cruise through qualification only to hit the tournament and completely fall apart. And it's not as if the Tunisians have not tried this time. The coach who started the qualifiers with them was fired. The one who ended the qualifiers with them was fired. They have appointed former Nottingham coach Sabri Lamouchi to bring them to this World Cup. And Lamouchi has rung in the changes, bringing in 11 new players, including the goalkeeper, who conceded 2 rather avoidable goals in this. Whilst the Tunisians were excellent in qualifiers and are struggling, at least on the evidence of the first game, it's the complete opposite for the Swedes, who had a miserable World Cup qualifying campaign. Many thought they wouldn't qualify, but somehow through the European Nations League, the repechage, and the playoffs, they are here. They appointed Graham Potter, remember him, former coach of Brighton, Chelsea, and more recently of West Ham United, having been sacked under a cloud of ignominy. He has turned things around for the Swedes. They look completely unrecognizable for the team that they were during the qualifiers. And it's looking like perhaps Graham Potter's calling all along had been international football management, because this Swedish team looks like one that could trouble any team that they come up against. Meanwhile, over in Group F, Japan and Netherlands played out an entertaining 2-2 drawn game. Japan hasn't lost to a European side since 2019, and this is a run that has included wins over Germany, Spain, and England. But as usual, it wasn't so much for the on-the-field performance of the Japanese, it was the off-the-field developments. Now, we've seen the Japanese do this over the years, but every time this is reported, because this is just not what people usually do, it tugs at the heartstrings, and it just gives us a whole new level of respect for the Japanese. Well, after that game against the Netherlands, they are making global headline for what they did after the final whistle, meticulously cleaning the stadium stands and leaving their dressing room squeaky clean and spotless. This is absolute class from the Japanese. And honestly, I wish the other nations and their fans, and indeed our Ghanaian fans, could start emulating that level of environmental discipline exhibited by the Japanese, not once, not twice, but consistently at home and when they travel. Well, now that we are talking about the on-the-field issues, let's look at a few off-the-field dramatic developments. And let's start with the biggest controversy which is brewing in the boardroom. A coalition of 13 World Cup nations from Africa, Asia, and Caribbean, including the South African Football Association, have issued a scathing reprimand, a joint statement condemning UEFA President Alexander Chefrin. Chefrin reportedly complained that the expanded 48-team format is bad for football because it creates, quotes, completely uninteresting matches. And the coalition's response has been swift. Ghana was one of the signatories to this beautifully executed reality check, and I'll quote what they said, that for our countries, there's no such thing as an important World Cup match. And to suggest otherwise fails to recognize the effort, sacrifices, and aspiration of players, coaches, and supporters across the world. End quote. I think Chefrin has to realize that football does not belong to a select few of European elites. We have heard other Europeans, including Gennaro Gattuso, who coached Italy to their ill-fated World Cup qualifications, say that they deserve more than others to be at this World Cup. Universal representation is the entire point of the World Cup. And by talking down to the rest of the world, Chefrin has just painted, what I think he's done is to paint a massive target on the back of the European teams, because now everybody is motivated to go out there and beat an European team to show that even the so-called minnows can go out there and do well at the World Cup. And I think he ignores the historical facts behind this, that for many years, the World Cup was mainly played between the European teams and the South American teams, and Africa and Asia hardly had a look in. And all this came to a crescendo in 1964 when Asia, Oceania, and Africa had to battle for just one ticket to the FIFA World Cup. And we doff our hats to the strong leaders that Ghana and Africa had around those times. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and the head of football in Ghana, Ahinijan, putting their foot down and getting the rest of Africa to rally behind them to boycott the 1966 World Cup. And since then, it started from one ticket for Africa and it's gradually grown since. Now, one can imagine what would have happened if Africa had the opportunity to play in the World Cup. All these European teams have had to build their capacity over time. So, Mr. Schifrin, this was not the fight you should have picked, and you got this completely wrong. Well, it's time for our Ghana Watch. Let's peek into the camp of the Black Stars and see what is going on. The Black Stars are preparing for their game on the 17th of June against Panama. But as was predicted, I predicted this, and as expected, the Thomas Partey issue continues to loom large as far as Ghana's preparations are concerned. The Athletic, which is under the New York Times, published a hugely suggestive, seedy, tabloid-like story criticizing the team for allowing criticizing Ghana and indeed the authorities for allowing Partey to participate in a soccer session with children at Ghana's training base in Rhode Island. Let me be entirely clear, and I have absolute disgust for this type of blinkered, agenda-driven journalism. Let's call it out for what it is. This is intellectually dishonest. The United States granted Thomas Partey entry into their country because he has no criminal convictions, although he has been charged with rape. To casually conflate a legal visa issue with unproven assault allegations as a threat to children is a repulsive leap, and we have to call out the Athletic and the New York Times. In what universe is he a danger to kids? It's tabloid trash, plain and simple, and it needs to stop. We know it's not going to stop. It probably will not be reduced as Ghana built up, but it needs to stop because this conflation does not work. He's not a convicted criminal. He's not a pedophile. He's not a pedophile. So how then does he become a danger to children who are having a good time working out with the Black Stars? The Athletic should be ashamed of itself for this piece. Now let's wash the bad taste of that Athletic report from our mouth and end in a profoundly positive manner. I'm a Christian. I love the Lord Jesus Christ. Romans chapter 1 verse 16 says, "For I'm not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes." And I was deeply inspired to see a group of German and Curaçao players huddled together on a pitch for a joint prayer session right after the 7-1 victory by the Germans. Felix Mecha, who had scored for the Germans, put it beautifully when he said, and I quote, "In the game we are opponents, but after the game we are all Christians and brothers," end quote. Now FIFA's rules, the IFAB Rule 4, has banned written religious messages on undershirts, but you can't ban genuine brotherhood and an expression of people's faith, and I loved to see that. That's your VAR check for day 4 of the FIFA World Cup 2026. Hit that subscribe button for more tournament dispatches. This is Yo Charley. Enjoy your football, block out the noise, and I'll see you after the next final whistle.